Hey, there's no shame in trying things that people ain't never tried before.
Video for a pal. Boys, writing advice. Number 1. Or, more correctly, creator and consumer advice. Number 1. If you watch much YouTube, you probably enjoy a few reviewers. I do, at least. But one of the most frustrating parts of online reviewers is inconsistency. All champion logic, reason in games, films, literature. This makes sense. While simultaneously praising works which make no sense, are completely illogical and unreasonable, and criticizing illogical and unreasonable work at the same time, often without explaining why. We are talking about that today. Boys, how to do logical and reasonable and illogical and unreasonable. When, where, how, and why, and what works. As a creator and as a consumer. Basic answer, putting philosophies, hard ingrained internal philosophies aside, quality stories people like. You make a quality story, people will like it. If someone makes a quality story, you'll like it. Whether or not it makes complete sense. For example, wider appeal. Star Wars. Boys, intended Harry Potter, but I haven't read any Harry Potter books besides the first and third grades, so I doubt I'm qualified, but oh, I love me some Star Wars. Whew, or I did at least. Anyways, how does the Force work? Why could this person do this at this point, but not here? That just makes no darn sense. Nobody says that, or few people say that, and the few who do's criticism often wiped away. Because Star Wars tells good stories. At least a few of them. Despite inconsistencies, because the stories are so good. Less wide appeal. Japanese media. Boys, you've read a story with adventurers in a system, an RPG system, where they're ranked and they hunt ranked monsters and they go on quests and all this good shit for the Adventurers Guild. How does that work economically, logically, or scientifically? It doesn't matter. You don't care. Because the story is good. Top link in the description. A popular example. Second link, beginning less popular example. Maybe third link, something I really liked in middle school. All good stories. You don't care about logic, reason, what makes sense, what doesn't, because the story is so good. You forgive it. No, you don't even forgive it, because there's nothing to forgive. This is a story. You're here for a story. The creator intended a story, and that's what it is. And that's why it works. Can work. But why some reviewers, when things don't make sense and the story isn't good, they rail it for realism and consistency and logic. When if the story was good, they wouldn't. So don't worry about consistency, logic, reason too much. Focus on quality. So creatively, how does this manifest? How can you apply this? Well, when I imagine stories, I need details, usually. For example, if I'm creating a universe and I have a town where a story is set with some characters, it's a place, maybe there's some local politics. If I don't have a wider world established, and even its exact geography. When I was younger, I was very bad about this. I needed to draw maps. Map out where each town sat, who was where, what politics were where, what each person believed, even if they never appeared in the story, because I was mortified mortified at the idea of a reviewer saying my story didn't make sense. So I needed everything around the story to make sense, to be consistent, just to tell the story, even if nothing else ever came up. When you really needn't do that. Third link, boys, I'm throwing it in there. The author created regions as he went. He had them in his head, but not necessarily where they were, who lived in them, why they lived in them, and what they believed until he reached each one. Then, after months, this is one of my first, ready boys, as it's updating experiences. Eventually compiled a map. But he didn't start that way. He started with a good story, which kept readers, then made everything consistent. Do you see what I'm saying? His story's quality earned his audience, not its consistency and logic. The logic and consistency came later. His quality came first. And I recommend you do the same. Because if you're like me and you're autistic and stupid, you'll spend months mapping out each little detail just in case someone asks, when really, if your story is quality, no one will ask because no one will care. Because they're too focused on the story you're telling, which is what you really want to tell. Not to discredit logical, precise, consistent universes, because those are fun, and they make good stories often. But they aren't necessary. You can tell a story without them. Again, those fantasy Japanese media. Boys, do you think each one using the adventurer system has an entire mythos mapped out? Or do you think they have a few characters in a story they want to tell in a formula? You don't even really need a formula, but that's just what they use. Setup. So, on the creative or righty boy end, focus on your story and the elements or scenes you want to hit. Then create consistency if you need it. Again, not that planning is bad, planning is good, universes are good, consistency is also great. But none are necessary. Do them if you want them, if you like them. But you don't need them to tell the story, to tell your story. Don't let them get in your way, boys. And on the consumer end, we kinda already hit this, but just reiterating. If a story is great, you aren't concerned about which planet is placed where, or which city is placed where, or geography, or timelines, specific timelines, the universe's basic origins, and all the generations leading up to the one your story takes place in. You don't care, as a consumer, usually. Maybe you do. If you do, you probably don't enjoy anything. Maybe you do. I don't know. I can't tell you about you boys. But if a story is good, you'll naturally give it leeway. And I recommend you give stories more leeway than less leeway, especially if the story is good. But that about rippity wraps this one up. I hope you enjoyed watching, because I certainly enjoyed making it. Just tell your story. Goblin Slayer, I haven't watched it, and I don't intend to because I prefer reading stuff. It's not an uppity thing, it's more a time thing. When I watch things, I need to sit down and make time for them, but when I'm reading, I can just pick it up and put it down, so I've been reading it. And I tend to avoid popular stuff because I will read popular stuff at some point. But I picked this up in its popular hottie boy. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Worth reading now. Worth reading now in the heat. It's pretty good. The second one is still pretty new, but I like it a whole lot. I had an idea for a story like it, but I never made it because that was before I thought I was capable of doing anything, because I needed hyper consistency, which keeps you from doing things. But I feel that story's essence. It's pretty good. Third Link, I liked it a lot in middle school. I haven't read it. I won't. I swear to God, it'll be embarrassing. I'm sure it'll be embarrassing if I try to read it now. But I liked checking up on it, checking for updates at the time. And I still haven't finished it because I stopped reading it before it was finished. Maybe I'll go back one day and finish it, but I remember it being pretty good and I remember enjoying it. And for this video's example, again, he kept on bringing up cultures, and they were funny. They were pretty creative too. But he never mapped them, and people kept asking him for maps, and he didn't have maps, because when you're making a story and you have an idea for a story, you aren't thinking maps from the outset, or from the onset. Maybe you are. He wasn't. He had a story. He wasn't setting up a universe. That's not a bad thing. Maybe give it a read. I don't know. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit sometimes. Or, no, what shit. Like if you enjoyed, because we do this shit sometimes. Like if you enjoyed, because that helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit sometimes. And comment your thoughts, because I love hearing from you. This video is for a pal. Do you make anything? Or when you consume things, do you care much about consistency? I could have brought up Lost Planet. Maybe we'll bring that up in a separate video or an addendum video. Lost Planet series is very inconsistent with its lore and its mechanics. But every single game is phenomenal. Even the third. Even the third. Let me know down in the comments, boys, because I love hearing from you. But thanks again for watching, everybody, really. We have a lot of fun on this channel. So much fun, in fact. So much fun, in fact, you could run out of ketchup and just never buy more ketchup, because you go into, because there's a Burger King in town on your way to go places. So you just drop into the Burger King and you just grab a ton of napkins and plastic silverware and ketchup and mayonnaise, because that's what they have available, and put them in a bag, so you never have to buy condiments or silverware. And that's how much fun we have on this channel. Boys, look forward to doing this with you guys again in the future.